Okay, today we're talking to Alex Roberts, who's head of sustainability at Vistry Group, which includes the brands Bovis Homes, Linden Homes, and Countryside Partnerships. He's been working in sustainability and construction stroke housing for over a decade. And obviously, this is a critical area for sustainability because if you look at your personal carbon footprint in the UK, your home represents somewhere about 22% of it. So it is a very significant sustainability issue. So thanks for joining us, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So if we could start at the beginning, and if you could let us know how and why you first became involved in sustainability.
Yeah, sure. So back in my teenage years, 15 or 16, made my first ventures out into the French Alps, skiing, snowboarding, hiking, riding bikes. And it was really there where, I heard stories from mountain guides, people who lived in those environments about how the weather patterns had changed. I spent times on the glaciers. I'd seen the impacts of climate change firsthand around how the glaciers were rapidly retreating. And it made me want to do something about it. If I'm honest, purely for selfish reasons, at that age, I wanted to safeguard the future of snowboarding for myself. But that was, in hindsight, that was naive, perhaps for a couple of reasons. Firstly, how can one person change the world? And secondly, to think that when I sort of got into my late 30s, I'd still have the time to actually go and spend time skiing or snowboarding was naive as well. But here I am, a decade or so on, two young children, and then perhaps my purpose around sustainability sort of shifted. It's now more focused on them and the part that I can play in creating a better future for my kids.
So how did that interest from snowboarding translate into your career?
Yeah, so it led on to a university degree in geography initially, which I think is a great subject as an introduction to sustainability. Really teaches that systems thinking and how different sort of issues sort of are interconnected. Then I sort of focused down on a master's in environmental policy and management, and then actually another part-time master's in sustainable construction. And that led to my first roles in the sort of sustainability field. Spent some time working for the regulator, Environment Agency, Natural England, before moving to a housing association in sort of my first sort of graduate sustainability role.
Yeah. So the construction interest, was that just an opportunity that presented itself to you and you thought this would be interesting, or was it a deliberate move into construction?
It was completely by chance, actually. It was completely by chance. I've got to stop saying this because I've been working in the built environment for more than a decade now, but I feel like a sustainability professional that just happens to work in the built environment.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that the skills of a sustainability professional shouldn't be constrained or aren't constrained to one sector. What we do can be lifted up and it can be applied to any sector, I think.
And how have you found that's changed over time between your first job in the housing association up to working at Vistry?
Yeah, it's changed significantly, actually. When I first started out, if you're at a dinner party or something and someone asks you, what do you do? And I mean, it always frustrates me on one point that people define themselves by what their job is when they introduce themselves. But when you get asked the inevitable question of what do you do, you tell them you work in sustainability. It was almost a bit of a conversation stopper, to be honest. But that's notably shifted now. People get it. They understand what you do and why you do it. Quite often they've got a personal connection or a link to sustainability or an interest as well. So yeah, it shifted quite radically, actually. But I think that was certainly a challenge there when I first started out in my career. As a relatively new profession, it was difficult to look at others who had sort of succeeded or spent a career working in sustainability to try and model them. Back then, people in senior sustainability roles had come from all different manner of backgrounds. So there was never a really sort of well-trodden path of how to progress in the sustainability career. You sort of had to find your way through and sort of make it up as you went along, really.
So then, coming up to the present day, what are the drivers on Vistry to engage with sustainability?
Yeah, great question. So, and very timely question as well, actually. So Vistry have just embarked on a new strategy. So the focus of the group now is really on mixed tenure development. So whilst we still have open market sales through our our brands, Bovis, Linden Homes, and Countryside Homes, we predominantly do a work in partnership with local authorities, housing associations, and those partners, those clients, increasingly so, they want a sustainable product. So there's a real driver coming from them. Much of that work comes through competitive tenders as well. There are questions asked around sustainability performance and the sustainability of the product that we can deliver, and that's a real driver for us, and it puts Vistry in quite a unique position in the sector, actually, because we can work in partnership with our clients to deliver more sustainable, higher energy performing homes, and then we can take the learning from that work and then translate it to the open market homes that we'll have on sale, and preparing for the future home standard legislation that's expected in 2025.
There is a kind of trickle down effect from these sort of client driven sustainability projects down to the open market over time.
Absolutely. So our clients pay us to deliver a higher energy performing home. So we're already delivering hundreds of homes that are, in terms of their regulated energy, so the heating and the lighting, a net zero carbon for that aspect of the home. So we're already building hundreds of those. We've got people living in them, and it's a really important preparation for us to deliver these homes, at some scale, to help us prepare for forthcoming legislation, a future home standard in 2025, where we expect to no longer be using gas boilers in homes. And it just means that we can learn how to deliver these homes at scale, ready for when that legislation comes into force.
I suppose that's like the car industry, where I'm old enough to remember when electric windows was a premium feature on a car, and now it's normal, and these sort of premium features become normal over time. So obviously you've got a very strong customer focus. Are there other stakeholders in play then for Vistry?
Absolutely. Our people. So we recently carried out a double materiality assessment, actually. So we carried out sort of really extensive stakeholder engagement surveys, interviews, to try and understand the expectations of all of our stakeholder groups in terms of sustainability. And our people, they want to work for a responsible company. So we have a changing expectation from people, both people who already work for us, but also an important part of recruitment as well. Young people entering the workplace, they want to work for a responsible company. They want to have a sense of purpose with their work. So it's an important driver there as well. We're a FTSE 250 company. We're owned by our investors. There's been a radical shift from them as well in terms of the expectations they have around sustainability. And that does present a challenge. There are a number of sort of different ways that investors will sort of look to understand our sustainability performance. So there's quite a burden on us in terms of reporting and responding to some of those requests, and for various different sort of sustainability indices that exist. There's a lot of talk out there amongst the sustainability profession around the need for fewer of those and more consistency, because otherwise we spend our time telling people what we've already done rather than actually getting on and doing it.
Yeah, I've a client who tells me that it's about 50% of their time is responding either to a CDP and other indices that you're talking about, or customer questionnaires and everything else, and they're having the same conversation, that a more streamlined set of sort of information exchanges might give them a lot more time to do stuff.
Absolutely, and streamline's the key, because they're a really important part of this change process, right? But there's just too many of them at the moment, so that streamlined approach is what we need.
So those three stakeholders that groups of stakeholders, I should say, that you've mentioned, customers, your employees and investors, can you sort of satisfy all them with the same sustainability efforts, or do you have to tailor it to the three different groups? Are there any conflicts, I suppose, as well between the expectations of those three different groups?
Yeah, of course there are conflicts, and an obvious one is the fact that at times some of the sustainability initiatives that we want to pursue cost more money, and that becomes particularly challenging at a time of price inflation for materials, etc., competitiveness around the price point that we can deliver a home for. So there is that competing tension, of course. One thing that we've done to try and mitigate that is to bake sustainability targets into remuneration. So colleagues across the group who have a bonus as part of their remuneration package, there's a sustainability target attached to that.
Yeah, excellent.
We've also just arranged a sustainability linked loan, a revolving credit facility with three sustainability performance targets attached to that. And that really gives us a sense of focus as well. So when there are these external challenges that inevitably happen out there in the economy, in the marketplace, we still have this focus of these targets that are sort of baked into what we do.
So perhaps you could expand how the link loan element works.
Yeah, so the sustainability linked loan has three sustainability performance targets attached to it. One of those is linked to reduction in our Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon emissions. Absolute reduction is linked to science-based targets. There's another target we have. So at Vistry, we have on-site skills academies where we, on our larger developments, we set up a skills academy. We encourage people who are new to the industry to come on, learn some construction skills, and hopefully then create an opportunity for them to enter the industry. And we also have a target around the delivery of affordable homes beyond policy compliance. So we're aiming to year on year deliver more and more affordable homes to help tackle the housing crisis that we face in the country. So those three targets that are agreed with our lenders give us a sort of a slightly preferential interest rate, and we report back to the lenders each year on a performance against those targets.
Right, fantastic. And you were mentioning science-based targets. You have a overall net zero target underpinned by those science-based targets. Perhaps you could.
We do. So the Vistry Group's gone through a lot of change over the last couple of years. So we've actually had to go back to science-based targets initiative and re-baseline and reset our targets, because we're in a large group following the combination with Countryside. But within that resubmission, we've included a net zero carbon target. So that's for 2040. And then we also have some near-term targets as well for 2030 around Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and also Scope 3 as well.
Yes, I think most people watching this will know the difference between the three, but Scope 1's on-site, sort of within the factory fence. Scope 2's electricity. Scope 3's everything outside the organization, including supply chain and product. So what does the net zero target, how much does that cover, just out of interest?
Yeah, so Scope 1 and Scope 2 and Scope 3 for net zero. Yeah. Right. So in terms of actually what this targets are, we've got a 42% reduction in Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 2030. Yeah. That's against the 2022 baseline. And that's absolute emissions as well. So that's a real challenge for us. So as a business that has, growth ambitions, we have to decouple the growth of the business with our carbon emissions. So there's a real challenge there.
Yes,
for us. Scope 3, it's a 51.6% reduction, and that's per 100 meters squared of built product by 2030 against the 2022 baseline. But it's important to acknowledge that the part that legislation's playing in these Scope 3 reductions for us. So our biggest source of Scope 3 emissions at the moment is the regulated energy. So the lighting and heating that's used in our homes by the occupants when they're living in them. Yeah. And we've seen, in terms of building regulations, the Part L uplift recently that's driven improvements there, and also the forthcoming anticipated future home standard in 2025. Yeah. that sort of really significantly reduces those emissions for us. And I think perhaps one of the few sectors that actually has quite a clear roadmap and legislation sort of driving us to meet those emissions reductions. But when we first set out on this journey, we were really scratching our heads around this sort of burden shift. So as we improve the efficiency of our homes, and we would use more insulation, perhaps some solar panels, larger radiators, air source heat pumps, a lot more technology. So actually there was this burden shift from operational energy to embodied carbon.
Yeah.
But then recently, following the combination that Vistry Group had with Countryside, we now have 3 factories. We have an ambition to predominantly build new homes through timber frame construction off-site. And then we can start seeing how we significantly reduce our embodied carbon as well. So we each have a quite clear sight and quite clear confidence as to how those targets are going to come to life at Vistry.
Fantastic. You mentioned challenges. You mentioned it was a big challenge with the company expanding, driving down absolute emissions. What are generally, day to day, what keeps you awake at night? What are the challenges you face in delivering all this?
Yeah, what keeps me awake at night? But one of the biggest challenges is, and I'm sure many sustainability professionals who might watch this can relate, right? Often we're quite small teams within the group center of if you're in a large organization, like Vistry, we've got 5,000 people that work for us. We've got a small team that wants and needs to have all of those 5,000 people understand how they can play a part in this sustainability journey. We need to communicate with them. We need to inspire them. We need to give them the skills, the knowledge, the understanding, the tools and the resources to help us on this sustainability journey. So that's a significant challenge for a small team, right, to engage with that many people. But then we start looking outside of Vistry, and we start considering what happens on our sites, and perhaps another 20,000 people of supply chain who we need to engage with as well, and also bring them on this journey. So it's a really big communications and engagement challenge to get all of those people on message and playing their part.
Oh, fantastic. And obviously you've got in the construction industry a constantly changing cast of characters on site as each trade comes and goes, subcontractors, subcontractors, etc. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so we work with the Supply Chain Sustainability School, as do many of our peers. So all of our supply chain subcontractors that work with us have access to the school, phenomenal training resource, tools like gap analysis to understand how they can start building their own sustainability strategies. And really for us as a sector, that collaboration and that consistency of expectation is significant, a significant opportunity, I think. But also we'll see this trickle down effect, right? Many of us have set science-based targets, particularly with Scope 3. Once we start to look towards our biggest impact areas around materials, we start to look to our supply chain. So we've already started to have questions with some of our largest suppliers around their science-based targets, and of course then they have a discussion with their suppliers about their science-based targets, and you can really start to see how the sort of expectation starts to trickle through the supply chain. But we want to be there to support our supply chain on this journey as well, as much as we can.
Yeah. You mentioned peers. Is it ever an issue, or is it clear cut when you sort of collaborate and work together on things like, right, let's improve the quality of the supply chain in terms of sustainability for everyone, but then going back to the competitive nature where you're trying to outdo your peers to get a particular contract when there's a significant sustainability requirement? Is there ever any conflict between that, or does it tend to work itself out?
Yeah, I think it tends to work itself out. Yeah, there is certainly, particularly between the sustainability teams, some healthy collaboration for sure. We're working on the same challenges, and there's no winners and losers in this, right? We either all win or we all lose. So we've got to work together on this, and that's really where the sort of regulation helps as well there to create that level playing field for us. And the future home standards are a really important part of that to help the whole sector decarbonize. And Vistry, because of the work we do with our partners, because of the scale that we're already building some of these homes at, hundreds of these already each year with people living in them. We're very open about sharing our learning and our experiences. We've got case studies available online for others, to learn from our experiences. And of course, we'd want to go faster, but it's important to recognise what a radical shift this is for a sector that hasn't changed very much at all in a very long time. So there's a lot of change that's required. There's a lot of upskilling that needs to happen. There's a big skills gap in terms of green skills. The installation of air source heat pumps, the availability of air source heat pumps. We're going to need a lot of those installers over the next few years. So really that gearing up in terms of being ready for 2025 is vital for us to collaborate and to be open and to share on our experiences there.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So modesty aside, what are your proudest achievements, either at Vistry or at any other part in your career?
We'll focus on career because the obvious answer is your kids, right? When you talk about what you're proud of. But for me, it's probably the resilience. Actually, the resilience that I've had over the last decade or so. It feel a little bit like walking through treacle sometimes. I think working in sustainability, you're trying to change the status quo, and that's a difficult thing to do. Often people don't want to change, and the resilience to keep on going. In a profession where daily we're bombarded by bad news, right? And time's running out. We haven't done this quick enough. We haven't done that fast enough. All of the doom and gloom that can be associated with climate change and biodiversity loss. It could be draining. But I think it's important to reflect on the progress we have made. We talked at the start around, at the early stages of my career in sustainability, where people didn't really understand what it was that I did and how that's changed. The number of young people that want to come into this industry, the fact that I work at a large PLC, sustainability is talked about at the highest level throughout the whole organization, but at the highest level as well through our sustainability committee and PLC boards, our executive boards. Sustainability's firmly up there as a discussion point. And let's be honest, it wasn't a few years ago. And that's a significant shift. The sector's got a lot of work to do to become more sustainable, to mitigate biodiversity loss and decarbonize the homes that we build. But we can see how that's going to happen through. Let's be honest, the legislation's coming. We've got the biodiversity net gain regulations next year. We've got the future home standard. We can see how these things are there to play their part in transforming the sector.
Yes. And you were talking about, new people wanting to come in to the sustainability field. If you were talking to, say, a university student who was interested in joining the construction industry to do sustainability, what would your advice to them be?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's an incredibly broad subject, right? So particularly within the construction sector, you could be a sustainability specialist in a certain area. You could be very technically focused, or you could be more of a generalist, like I am in my role. And certainly in the generalist role, perhaps when I first started out in my career, I thought I had to have all of the answers. That's incredibly difficult, particularly for sustainability. It's such a broad topic that touches many areas. It's so rapidly evolving, it's difficult to keep up. So I think that the key thing would be to acknowledge you don't have to have all of the answers. I often see myself as a bit of a facilitator, right? I perhaps go and I pull the experts into the room, light the match and get them to tell me the solution to the problems using their expertise, rather than expecting to have all of the answers myself.
Yes, well, I can relate to that because I went from trying to know it all when you can't. There really is no such thing as a sustainability expert, to facilitating, partly because people working in the industry, in their industry, know their industry better than I ever will. Secondly, because really to make sustainability happen, you need it to be out there and not in your little sustainability silo. But probably the main reason I find, I don't know if you will agree to this, is that if somebody comes up with a sustainability idea themselves, they are far more likely to pick up the ball and run with it than if I tell them to do it. So I suppose a lot of my career is trying to persuade people they've had good ideas with a little bit of a nudge in the right direction.
Yeah. No, absolutely, totally agree.
So is that facilitator role? Is that do you find people are receptive to you sort of almost throwing the ball back into their court, rather than sort of them being able to say, that's a sustainability issue, let's throw it at the sustainability department and let them get on with it?
Yeah, they're absolutely receptive, and it's like it's the only way, right? We're a huge organization doing a humongous variety of different tasks, and yeah, I don't have the answers, but I can help other people draw them out. I can help draw them out of other people. But one thing I like to do as well, though, particularly in those sorts of sessions, is try and make this emotional link to sustainability for people. Whatever, it's probably different for everyone. But one thing I like to do, there's a couple of videos I like to play that they sort of pull on the heartstrings a little bit. We then sort of throw some picture cards out onto the desk and ask people to pick a card and use it to how they're feeling after watching the video, and you get a really broad range of responses from the optimistic to the pessimistic to the those with solutions, and it's really interesting to see how everyone connects with this issue differently. Mm-hmm. And it's important to acknowledge that. I think, like, particularly professionally, everyone's going to have a different hook. And as a sustainability professional, it's our job to understand how we can sort of add value and help them achieve what they're trying to in their role. Yeah, because ultimately the place we find ourselves in now is we've all got sustainability jobs, right? It's not just the sustainability team. Every single person, certainly in Vistry now, needs to have a sustainability job. That's the only way we're going to radically change this this organization in this industry to be more sustainable.
Right. Well, that's I think that's a fantastic note to finish up on. That it can't be a sustainability silo working its own. We have to engage people and get everybody thinking along the lines and changing the way they do their job. So thank you very much, Alex, for taking part. And I think there's an absolute wealth of insights there that I hope all our viewers will learn a lot from. So thank you very much again.
Yeah, cheers, Gareth.